What's up, YouTube? Gonna try something new for the month of April. I figured that instead of putting out longer vlogs, if we do shorter snippets from each of my sessions, maybe a hand or two that we can go over, it'll be a lot easier for me to push out content. And in an attempt to get that going, I figure we'll do a little bit of a challenge. I'm gonna try to put out 10 videos for the month of April. If I cannot do that, then we're gonna do the one chip challenge. That's right. If we don't put out 10 videos in all of April, I'm gonna eat this and we'll record ourselves doing so. So obviously don't wanna have to do that. And if we were able to complete that challenge, then we'll move the challenge over to the next month and eventually we'll probably try to down this sucker. Anyway, so let's get to those hand histories. Gonna kind of dissect one from a recent one that I'd played and hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks. So before we jump into this hand breakdown, a little bit of background information. As I've mentioned in previous videos, all throughout this coronavirus breakout and lockdown, I've been playing mostly online in a couple of different various clubs. Obviously, there are different apps such as Poker Bros, the app also known as Poker 2. And for the most part, what I found were games were really good at the beginning, but as kind of time went on, games obviously became much tougher as the looser action players started to go broke and rake really started eating into those games. So what I found mostly that I've been doing lately is playing in two specific games, one of which is a local game with people that I know from my casino that's run rake free, and then another is the DGAF home games, which is run by DGAF and his podcast. As a Patreon member of his club, you get to play in these games, which are essentially rake free. The app does require you to take some rake, but that rake then goes back to the patrons who do pay for the right to play in these games, and eventually there'll be someone that's going to be put into the main event through a series of weekly tournaments. Similarly, there's just a bunch of games that run on the app daily, whether it's OFC, a lot of 5-card, 6-card PLO, as well as No Limit. So we've been kind of mixing it up, and this particular hand is one that occurred recently since DGF wanted to start running some more regular games for his podcast, so we decided to play some 1-2 No Limit. So let's jump into that hand. As we can see, the action folds to us on the button, and we wake up to Ace-Queen offsuit, obviously a standard open. And I decided to open to $8. I think that's probably the first mistake in the hand. I'm used to playing live poker where I generally open to like 4 or 5x. Given the rake considerations, because the rake is particularly low in these games, there's not such a need. And we want to be getting calls from the blinds with a fairly wide range. So I think I probably could have gotten away with opening to $6 or $7. Anyway, we open to 8, small blind folds, and now we get a call from the big blind. The big blind is a player who had been playing previously with us, and from what I can tell, he's mostly a good, solid thinking player, wasn't getting too out of line, and actually there were a number of instances where he just ended up waking up with sets and getting paid, in particular a couple of hands against us, where I'd end up flopping top with ace-king, and then I think he check called or check raised the flop, small, bet turn and bet river, and just had a set, I think like in 2 or 3 instances. So when he calls here, I think he's going to have not necessarily the tightest of ranges, but I do still expect to see some, good hands like king, queen, king, jack, queen 10, the aces, ace X's, and then some suited cards like maybe king X suited, queen X suited, and some connectors. Anyway, we go heads up to a flop, which comes ace 10, 6 rainbow. He checks, and I continue obviously with a C bet of $12. I think that I could probably get away with something like 1/3 to a half pot sizing. We want to be getting called fairly wide, and betting this large, it kind of caps how loose he's going to be continuing. Obviously, also in the similar regards, if we were to be having, let's say, some gut shots here, we want to be betting smaller to get a great price on our bluffs so that he can fold out a lot of his weaker holdings, and if he is going to continue, we're getting a much better price on our bluffs. So anyway, as I said, I think we'd be getting away with a smaller bet. He ends up calling. I think when he calls here, he's going to have some of the nut gut shots, maybe hands like 9-8, king, queen, king, jack, and then some, top pair holdings, obviously any aces that he has in his range, as well as some of the second pairs like 10, jack, queen 10, things of that nature. Anyway, we go heads up to a turn, which is an offsuit queen, completing a full rainbow. Obviously a great card for us, making us top 2 pair. He now decides to lead into us for $15, which is something that I wasn't particularly expecting. Also, given his tank and then lead here, I thought there was actually a decent chance that he just ends up waking up to the nuts here. Obviously, you could also have some of the sets like pocket 10s, pocket 6s. Now that the board is changing a little bit, I think that he possibly might be leading these, A, for value, and B, to charge us if, for example, we have a hand like king, queen that's not going to be checking back our gut shots. So when he leads here, I don't think there's any particular reason to have to raise. Obviously, if we do raise, I think we'd be targeting hands like maybe ace-10 and ace-6. Other than that, the other value hands I think we're going to be losing to, like sets of 10s and sets of 6s. I don't expect him to ever have a hand like 10-6 suited, possibly in his range. Also, obviously, there are going to be hands such as Queen 10, which we are going to have the 2 pair against. But against these hands, I think depending on his river sizing, we can go for value with a raise there. So we do call, and we end up going heads up to a offsuit deuce on the river. Obviously, it does not change anything. And given the number of hands that I played with him previously, I had a little bit of a sick feeling in my stomach that he just had King Jack here. Obviously, maybe seeing a little bit of the monsters under the bed, given the hands that we had played in the past. But just timing-wise, something felt like he was particularly strong. So I thought to myself, if he is going to be betting large, probably never going to be able to find a fold. But I think against large bet sizes, I was just never going to be raising. Anyway, after some thought, he ends up jamming it all in there. That's right. He puts us all in for $335 into this $71 pot. Oh, I was not expecting. That's for sure. My immediate thought is, what sorts of hands am I going to be calling with here? I think hands like, a set of aces, a set of queens, I'm not really sure I'm going to be folding. I don't expect when he takes this sizing it to ever be a bluff. It's just not something that I think is in this particular opponent's range and just something that he's capable of. And similarly, I don't think it's something that many are capable in general. You're not just really going to find anybody that's going to ship 5x pot with hands that aren't going to either be the nuts or near nuts. So my initial thought was just like, this is basically a fold. I don't beat any of his value hands. I really can't see any hands that he would take this line as a bluff. Sure, there are some of the hands like maybe King, Queen, Queen, Jack were the gut shots that would now be leading the turn as a bluff and then take this massive overbet sizing with the blockers. But it's just not something that I think that this particular opponent would be doing. Maybe a hand such as pocket jacks or pocket kings would be better suited for this as having 2 blockers, but I would expect that those hands would be 3-betting out of the big blind. So after some thought and thinking it through, I was trying to just figure out what hands he would be taking this line with as a bluff. Similarly, for value. If you can, please pause this video now and go down below and leave me a comment. What you'd be doing versus the sizing with this particular hand, and what you think is the bottom of your calling range. If you have a set of aces, it's just always a call. A set of queens, what is the minimum hand you think you can call this sizing with? And similarly, if we have a hand like ace-king, are those hands, better suited to be making a call here as we do block the nuts? Anyway, after some thought, as you can see, I kind of time banked twice. I just didn't see him ever betting this sizing as a bluff, and I didn't think he would be ever taking this with worse 2 pairs. For example, a hand like Queen 10, Ace 10, Ace 6. I would expect those hands maybe bet pot size, maybe 2x pot, but I just, again, wouldn't think that those particular value hands would be going this large. So I ended up folding, and I showed the queen. Once I showed the queen, I saw that he tapped his cards to show his hand, but unfortunately, I think he'd done it too late, so it didn't show it immediately. Although, once you go into the hand replayer, you could actually see what the person does fold. He ended up asking me later on, what did you fold with that queen? And I hadn't noticed that when he tried showing, that I can actually show you later on in the replayer. So I was able to look back, and he ended up telling me that he had ace 10, which, as you can see in this sidebar, is in fact confirmed by him showing his hand. And so what he ended up telling us was, and this is a funny instance that we had played previously, that he had said he had a hard time doing bets on the app. He didn't fully understand the slider mechanism and that you can actually slide the chip upwards to bet a certain sizing. And he generally had an issue with trying to bet, like, let's say if you wanted to bet 2/3 or something between 2/3 and full pot, trying to type it in. So I guess what he was doing mostly now was typing in the sizing. And it seems like what he had done was probably mis-enter the sizing, probably type in, instead of, I think he said he wanted to bet 40 something, maybe instead of betting 43, he ended up betting 430, adding a 0 or something and entering, which put them all in. So obviously a misclick on his part, something that never really crossed my mind. So it's an interesting thought to see that he did end up going for value, obviously with worse. I don't think that this is going to happen very often. Again, obviously you would have probably done this with a hand like ace-6 suited, but I think what ended up occurring was we just kind of ran into the bottom of his value range that we could beat, and just kind of a silly instance where the misclick ended up working for him. I think that, if he ended up betting something like $100, I'd probably still find a call. Any other sizing, maybe anything over that, I probably find a fold because I just, like I said, I had seen monsters under the bed against this opponent previously where he just always had it. And I think it's kind of a funny, interesting hand to look back at and think about how this misclick ended up winning him the pot. And similarly, an interesting thought process of where we are going to find a call, kind of like what the bare minimum of a call is here. Like I said, I don't think ace-queen against this sizing is a call. Hands such as, a set of aces or set of queens, I think a little more interesting. I think if I ended up having like a set of queens here, I'd probably still fold because I just never had seen him bluff with worse. And I just really, I thought that King Jack was kind of the bottom of what he'd end up showing up here with. So that's it for now. Let me know in the comments as well if this is something that you find interesting, kind of going over a quick hand review from a session. And similarly, if you like, reach out on Instagram. If you can send me a hand replay such as this, then if I find any particularly interesting ones, then I can possibly go over them as well. Give me as much relevant information as possible. Of course, that's going to really be able to help, as I do believe that a big part of these hands ends up being what your personal experiences with the opponents and kind of what your own feelings were through the hand. Obviously, you can kind of look through a vacuum and make a decision based on what you're going to see just from the basic math of the hand, but the extra information are really what's going to put it over the top. Again, if this was any other opponent at the table, I would think that they could be taking these lines as a bluff with a hand, let's say, such as 10-Jack with the blocker. But given just who the opponent was, I didn't think he was ever doing it for with worse. And so I thought it was always value. And against kind of his value range, I thought ace-queen was pretty much just at the cusp of what I'd be calling him with. And I didn't think it was good enough to be calling this like 5x pot size bet. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you guys, and see you in the next one.